Hello and welcome back to the ArsenalVavel YouTube channel for another episode of The Breakdown. This time we are focusing on Norwich, which is our next opponent, and I'm delighted to be joined by George Wilson, the Norwich Vavel editor. So welcome, George. Thank you for coming on.
No worries. Pleased to be on. Thank you.
So obviously you're a big Norwich fan as well as being the editor. Not been a great start domestically in the league for either of us this season. First sort of season back in the Premier League, a year out. So obviously you were here 2 years ago. What's it like being back in the league? Is it an exciting thing?
Yeah, it is exciting. I think, as you say there, it hasn't been the start anyone wanted, but at the same time, I don't think anyone is too surprised given who we've played. You say about it being exciting. I think the Liverpool game, obviously, we played on opening day. While we lost that day, I think every fan kind of came away thinking, brilliant, one, to be back in the ground, but two, to be back in the league. Man City away. I mean, we've both taken 5-0 beatings there. That was another one where we didn't really expect anything, but at the same time, we didn't really show up there, which was a bit disappointing. And then the Leicester game 2 weeks ago was that was going into it as a fan. Your first thought was maybe we can get something today, and we very nearly did. Had we had a bit more luck with the offside, I don't know. We still need to show a little bit more mettle. I think just a bit more toughness. I think that's what we've been lacking. But obviously, as you say, given we both go into this Saturday on zero, someone's going to get off the mark, and I think our fans will be disappointed if we don't, but at the same time, it's still Arsenal and it's still quite a big challenge, even given the start you've made.
Yeah, it's almost perfect opportunity for both sides. Obviously, Arteta, from the fan base, is under quite a lot of pressure. But again, you sort of look at both our starts. I think your start probably might be a bit harder with Liverpool, City and Leicester. But it's a difficult one. And were you expecting sort of to be on 0 points after those 3 games that you saw? Obviously, I don't think any Arsenal fans thought there'd be 0 points on the board, so it's a bit of a demoralising start for us. Is it the same for you, or is it sort of the level you think you should have been at?
I definitely didn't expect anything from the first two, because, like you say, Liverpool, Man City. But the feeling after the Leicester game was definitely that it was a missed opportunity because they weren't really at it. We walked out of the ground afterwards and a group of Leicester fans in front of us were saying, we've just played rubbish and won the game. Because, and I feel like when you play against a team like that and they're not on their day, you kind of need to get something when you know that we're going to be grappling down at the bottom of the league. So that was disappointing. But no, I wouldn't say I expected a lot of points from these first few, because after we play against you, we're going to have Watford at home. That's kind of going to be our pressure cooker of a game. But no, I didn't really expect too much, if I'm being honest.
Is there sort of a case of sort of your season starts now? Because there's a lot of that feeling with Arsenal fans that sort of now, like, no disrespect to Norwich, but now is the sort of time we've had the sort of first 3, the international break, made our transfers, and it's a on paper easy game that you expect. And that's where we get the goals and the 3 points. Is there sort of a similar feeling that you've had that sort of start now into the Premier League, a difficult start? You've had those signings. You've got everyone that you can have until January, and now it's the time that you can really kick on.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think there's definitely a belief that we can go to the Emirates and come away with something, purely because, as you've said there, and as I'm sure you've mentioned on like previous podcasts, you've had a poor start as well. You can't hide from that, can you? So I think that there is definitely belief that we can do that. Whether we can or not is a different question. I think we brought in a couple of signings towards the end of the window that have given kind of the fans a bit of a boost, and I think they will probably maybe both be brought in for Saturday. So I think now we've kind of got the squad that we wanted and all the positions filled up. I think it is kind of a feeling of Farke's now got to start to get them to click. and hopefully that does happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, you mentioned the new signings there. What can we sort of expect? Because I don't know how much Arsenal fans know about Norwich. So I've sort of followed them a bit, obviously through you and sort of being friends with you and talking at uni and stuff. But who's sort of the danger man? Obviously, you lost when Buendia. Cantwell is sort of almost the other player everyone really knows and's been touted for a Premier League move, and Aaron's at right back. But who else is sort of the player that we should watch out for? Is it one of the new signings? Is it someone established?
Yeah, I think you probably are looking at the new signings in that sense. I'd say if you've got people listening who kind of maybe didn't follow us at all since we went down in Project Restart, I think the team does look pretty different, because I think as we've come up, we've been a bit more ruthless. Obviously, we lost Buendia, but we've also let a lot of players go who were in the Premier League last time and simply weren't up to it. And I think the fans quite like the fact that there's a bit more ruthlessness there, and there's a bit more will to make sure we're stronger this time. So you're probably looking, going forward, you're probably looking at Milo Rashica, who we brought in from Werder Bremen, and he's shown signs of promise in the first few games. I'd say he hasn't really had the chance yet to get involved properly because of the teams we've been against. But I like the look of him. There's also Christos Zolis, who a Greek international. He's a winger who's come in from PAOK in Greece, and he made his debut against Bournemouth in the Carabao Cup. And I suppose you can say about the Carabao Cup, you can say it was Bournemouth's second string and everything else, because I know you had the same against West Brom, but in that game, he ripped it up. I think he got 2 goals, 2 assists. He's still yet to play in the league, but I think the fans are kind of waiting for him to be unleashed, because, we don't really know a lot about him ourselves, but from what we read and from what you see, he's been linked with Man United in the past or whatever. And I know transfer links can be kind of a bit dodgy depending on who they're from. But I think there is an excitement to see him come in. I think there's not going to be a player who's up to Buendia kind of individually, but I think the hope is that the group of attacking players that they've brought in will, as a group, be able to match what he brought us.
And what about Josh Sargent? Is he the sort of striker that you need? Obviously, Pukki sort of had a great start to the Premier League a couple of years ago, and they never really sort of hit the heights he did in the Championship the year before. Did well last season. Is there a danger there that he won't do it? Is Josh Sargent the man that you needed? Does he look sharp?
I think there are a few fans who are starting to think that Sargent is the man who needs to be starting games. But I think Pukki got off the mark against Leicester, albeit from the penalty spot. But they all count, and I think for this game especially, I think it probably will be Pukki from the start. But I think Sargent has come on in every Premier League game, and he's like a different option, because again, he's kind of a player that the defences are a bit unsure about, so they're not sure how to play against him, whereas Pukki maybe they're much more familiar with. I'm not sure, but I think Sargent, as the season progresses, will get more starts, because one of the issues we had 2 years ago with Pukki is you say he had the brilliant start to the season, but when he went on the poor run and when he wasn't scoring and so on, there was no one really capable of stepping up in his shoes and like giving him a break. So I think that's hopefully what Sargent will bring.
What do you see in this Arsenal team? Sort of, because obviously we've been on a downhill spiral for a while. Everyone sort of knows that, but you could sort of pick up players and aspects of the game that you can sort of recognise from Arsenal. And I've sort of, now everyone's sort of laughing and joking on Arsenal. It sort of seems a bit more serious now that, actually you're not just like a one-off sort of thing. Is there sort of what can you see at Arsenal as a rival fan, as a sort of someone else, sort of supporting someone else in the league? Sort of, where can you sort of see the dangers of Arsenal? What's standing out to you as where we can hit you hard?
To be honest, Aubameyang, even though he's kind of looked a bit off it over the last few months, he scares me, because he strikes me as the type of player who could flick a switch and suddenly he's kind of back to the form he was in 2 years ago. Because I think he scored both goals for you at Carrow Road 2 years ago, didn't he? In that 2-2. And I really like Smith Rowe. I think in that Brentford game, which I think most people watched because it was the opening game, I think he was kind of the shining light in that game. It kind of just didn't work because probably no one except Kieran Tierney looked up for it, really, did they? So I think he's definitely a worry as well. Then you've got Saka, I think, still at the age that he is, he's still a little bit raw, but then in other games you think he looks the real deal. So I think there's definitely players there. I think that you could hurt us if we catch you on a good day and you're at it, then you could cause us problems. I think another one is it Thomas Partey. Is he going to be back in for Saturday? I keep seeing.
I hope so. He's back in training, back in first team training. I hope so. I don't want to rush him back because we've got you and Burnley and then Spurs. So I wouldn't want to rush him back. So I think he might come off the bench and play 30 minutes or so.
You want him for that Spurs game, you think?
Well, I'd rather sort of have him fully fit and fresh for that game. I think if he's still here, he could do a job. Sambi's all right. Maitland-Niles can play there, so it's not like we're short of central midfielders. But I wouldn't want him to come in and get an injury like he did last time and came off at Spurs after 20 minutes. So yeah, but Partey, we know he can do a job. He ran the game in midfield against Man United before. So team news wise, is there any injuries for Norwich coming in out of the international break? Is there any sort of concerns for you?
In terms of injuries, I don't think so. I think we had Kenny McLean who was in the Scotland squad. I think he played one game for them and then he had to withdraw. But I think it's still kind of, at the time that we're recording, it's still not known whether that was for an injury or for another reason. But he's withdrawn, which he would be a player I would want to start at Arsenal because he's kind of a bit underrated among our fans, I would say, but he does make us tick quite nicely. Other than that, other injuries. Zolis, the Greek winger, he missed the Leicester game with an injury, but I think he still went on international duty, so I'm hopeful he'll be involved. Other than that, there isn't really anything of note, I don't think, no.
So I just sort of want to talk through sort of predictions, how we can see this game going. Because obviously, as we said, we've not scored yet in the league this season. You scored one, albeit for the penalty spot, but it's still a goal. It's still important. How would you approach the game? How would you want to, and how do you think Farke would approach it? Because it's almost, we're there for the taking. We're sort of bottom of the league. Everyone's sort of saying that we're in a lot of trouble, not scored. Is there sort of a way that you can see you going and trying to counter our threats, or sort of what game plan would you want to see implemented?
To be honest, I've spoken about this to a few people because it obviously does feel like quite a big game, even at this early stage, purely because of how we've started. I would love us to kind of really, really go for it at the start, because I think an early Norwich goal would really make the atmosphere in there. You know, I know that a load of people have turned on Arteta already, but I think if we were to score within the first 15 minutes, I think he would almost have to sit down in his chair, because, you know, your fans would be going hell for leather at him. Whether we do that or not, I don't know, because I think, as you said, there seems to be a feeling among the Arsenal fans and probably the players as well that with this run of games, us and then Burnley, that there is a chance to go for it. So you will probably try and do the same to us. I think the way we set up, which in previous games has been with a 4-3-3, kind of sets us up to play on the counter attack. So I would think that would probably be how we go about it again. But at the same time, Farke's philosophy, you know, that he goes on about all the time is about dominating possession. So that's probably what his intention will be, but we will have to see.
Yeah, it's worrying. We sort of seem to sort of start really well for 3 to 5 minutes. We start brilliantly. And then if we don't sort of get a goal or a great chance in that sort of first 5-minute period, we just drop off. You saw against Brentford, did the same thing. Chelsea did the same thing. City had a good about 3 minutes, didn't get the goal in the early chance, and then conceded after 7 or something. So it is really, for me, dangerous. We need to, like you said, almost the opposite. We need to get the early goal and settle the crowd, and then I think one goal home at the full crowd at the Emirates will really spur us on. Just final thing, score predictions. I know it's really early. We're recording this on a Wednesday. We still could have some international duty leg breakers or something tonight in the England game, which could affect us or sort of other games. But early score prediction, what are you going for?
I think I'm going to go with a 1-1. And I think I'd be pretty happy with that. I think the fact that neither team has been very free scoring, I think it could get a little bit cagey I think you're probably more likely to go for the jugular, but at the same time, I'd like to think this time, now we've got all the squad settled, I'd like to think we put up a fight and come away with something.
Yeah, it's really hard to be optimistic the way we've gone, and we sort of have a rule here that we can't predict an Arsenal loss. We're never allowed to, even if it's Man City. We've got to go for something positive. I'm going to say 2-1 to Arsenal, just because I think we'll concede, but I think it's a game that there's almost that expectation and pressure to win after the start we've had. I think they'll go for it, but I think we'll concede because I'm not sure I trust our defence massively. But I'm going to say 2-1, and I'm going to hope that's going to come true. So thank you for coming on. That's it for the preview. We've got some really great insight into Norwich there. 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday at the Emirates. Hopefully it's going to be an enjoyable one for one of us at least. For one of us at least, we'll get something from it. So thank you for coming on. Make sure to check out Norwich Vavel. I'm sure they'll have loads of content going out ahead of the game. We'll put the link in the description for George and Norwich Vavel. And make sure to tune in for our rest of the videos this week. Thank you and goodbye.